Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for your effort to join our session today, despite a busy teaching schedule. It's our honor to have our training experts from Cambridge University Press today. I would like to introduce you, Mr. Alan Davenport. Alan Davenport is our trainer, is the Professional Learning and Development Manager for Southeast Asia at Cambridge University Press. He has been actively involved in English teaching for nearly 2 decades as a teacher, training consultant, academic director, and examiner for numerous international exam boards. Alan holds a bachelor degree in anthropology and linguistics and a master's degree in education, with a focus on student development. He has been a featured speaker at international conferences and events, and his professional interests include the development of creativity, in learner, and investigate how English language teaching is adapting to meet the changing needs of language learners. Now I would like to do some logistic announcement. If you have any comment, questions, please put on the chat box, and we will get back to you at the end of the session. During the session, we are very appreciate if you can turn off your mic so that we can concentrate on the presentation. And now, without further delay, please join me to welcome Mr. Alan Davenport for his session today. Over to you, Alan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wen. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And while I'm saying thank you, I need to say thank you to our partners and colleagues from Zenbooks for helping make this happen, and to all my Cambridge colleagues as well for organizing this. But to you, teachers who are giving us part of your day today to learn more about the material and how to best use it to teach teenagers, I really, really appreciate it. So first thing, before we jump in, I just need to do a couple of checks to make sure that you can interact with the chat box and so that you can hear me. So I need to see, let me think of a number between, you know what? I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 10 right now. And I want to see who is the first person who can guess what that number is. So go ahead and let me know in the chat box if you think that you can guess what number I'm thinking of. I see Miss Chi-Chi who says 3, 6, 7, 7, 7, 7. Oh, 7's a very popular number. I still haven't seen it yet, though. It's not 7, it's not 1, it's not 7. It's a number between 1 and 2. I see it from Ms. Timai. You can see it right there. I'm not making it up. I was thinking of the number 8. No reason. I just wanted to do that and just wanted to say, please feel free to use the chat box during this. I'm sure my colleagues will be looking for it or looking at it to see if you have any questions during this that we can answer at the end. We're going to have plenty of time for questions, so don't worry about that. And there's nothing for me to do now except to make sure that we can share the screen. And I see the screen is being shared. Everything seems to be all right. So let's get on with it. Now, since I know the chat box works, and since I know we had some interaction with the numbers, I have a question I would like to ask you. And I do know that teaching teenagers or young adults, or maybe even if it's 12-year-olds, if you're lower secondary, I know sometimes they can be a headache. Sometimes we leave going, oh my goodness, what just happened today? Sometimes they can be little monsters. I know this, I've taught them, but sometimes they can really be a joy to teach. And I'd like to know in the chat box, if you could answer this for me, what do you like most about teaching teenagers? Maybe, like I said, maybe not every day's a holiday, but they can be fun to teach. what is it that you like most about teaching teenagers? I'd like to see some answers in the chat box now. I'll give you some time to type and write. Starting to see, oh, starting to go fast. They're active and energetic. Absolutely. They're interesting. And I think that that's something that I like as well. Now, somebody has said they're naughty and energetic. I think, you know, you actually like that they're naughty. That's yeah. I mean, if you do, that's wonderful. They're young and they're curious. Yeah, they're creative and lovely. I like these answers a lot. I really like, you know, that they are energetic. Sometimes we think, you know, that they're unmotivated, but they are full of energy. They are active. They do make noise. They are very creative. One of the things, let me scroll back up and find it again, that I really like that Win Lowen said, they're interesting. And I like that as well, because, you know, they have their own ideas now. I love teaching preschool when I taught that, but pretty much all the kids were the same. You know, they like the same candy, they like the same things, but they're interesting when they're teenagers, because you can start to see some personalities form. I like what I see just right now in the chat box. They're willing to take up a new hobby. There's an element of trying on new things, of deciding what they like and what they don't like. And, you know, the teenage period is a lot of times where students are making decisions for themselves. So I love all of these answers. I love that it says predictable. I think that is a great one as well. Sorry, unpredictable. I'm having just a little bit of an issue with my computer. It just kind of froze on me. Give me just a second. There we go. They're unpredictable. They're spontaneous. They, you know, we ask a question and sometimes we get shocked by the response, sometimes in a good way because of their cleverness and creativity. I've asked this question a lot to many teachers, and one of my favorite answers, I love all of your answers, I promise, but one of my favorite answers, I see you in, they're dynamic, yeah. One of my favorite answers came from a teacher in Malaysia, and it said, this teacher said to me, I like teaching teenagers because I get a chance to see the person they are going to become. And I don't know why that answer stuck with me, but I like that answer. I'm just wondering, in the chat box, let me know, do you agree with this quote? Do you disagree? I mean, think about that. I get a chance to see the person they are going to become. I don't know, I'm getting some agrees. Remember in the chat box that you can send things to everyone, and that means everyone can see it. If you send it just to me, only I can see it, because I am getting some things that say specifically to me. Yeah, do agree. And I think that this, for me, is one of the things that kept me motivated as a teacher. And I didn't consciously think about it. I viewed teenagers the same way you guys mentioned that you did. You know, they're active, they're energetic, they can be fun, they can be spontaneous, they can be naughty sometimes. But really the magic is, even more than when I taught kindergarten or elementary school or primary school, with teenagers, you start to see that spark of personality. And our job as teachers is not just to teach, you know, the language, but to help guide that personality, to help, you know, help them realize what they can achieve and who they are. It's a magical time to be a teacher. It's a difficult time to be a student. Sometimes I think we look back, or at least I look back and I say, oh, I wish I could be a teenager again. But I don't mean it. I'm really lying. I mean, I wish I were young again. And sometimes when I walk downstairs, I wish I wish my knees didn't hurt. And some of you young teachers, you don't understand what I'm talking about. But some of you older teachers like me, you know what it's like when you look up a set of stairs and you say, is there a lift nearby? You know, that sort of thing. I mean that sometimes I miss part of being young, but I don't miss everything about being a teenager. Being a teenager can be a very stressful time. You know, we worry about, you know, oh, I'm getting spots on my face. I'm worried about who my friends are. I'm worried about, you know, what somebody just said to me privately in the chat box, you know, seeing the flaws. You know, when we're teenagers, we can be somewhat insecure, and it's hard to make a safe place for it. So I think we need to keep all of this in mind. Even though I'm here today to talk about teaching with THiNK, I think we need to keep all of this in the background, that there is, you know, a formative experience that we have when we teach teenagers, because the things that we enjoy about them sometimes are the same things that make us want to pull our hair out. We enjoy their naughtiness. We enjoy their spontaneity. We enjoy their activity. But the same thing we like can be the same thing that frustrates us. All right. So the question then is, knowing all of that, then how can the materials we use with teens help us? Because teens are all of those things we mentioned, good and bad. And materials, they have to teach language because we're language teachers and we teach English. But how can the materials we use with teens help us? And I think what I want to show you today is how that THiNK does teach language, but it also goes beyond language to motivate and to inspire and to give confidence as best we can to teenage learners, to help them be the best they can be as they form who they are going to be in the future. So that's really what I want to talk about today. All right, you've been listening to me very well. I would like to see the number 16 in the chat box. Can I get 16 people to type the number 16? 16. Not 60, but 16. I'm seeing it. You're still with me. I've got 3 people. I've got 4 people. Give me more. I'm greedy. I want 16 people to type. Oh, I've got 8. I'm halfway there. I've got 10 now. I've got 11. I've got 12. I've got 13. I've got 14. I've got 15. I've got some direct messages to me. Can I get maybe 3 more? I'm just greedy. I want more. I want more. 16. Okay. Thank you to everybody in the chat box. I got my 16. And the reason why is because I wanted to look at 16 things that I think helps us that come with THiNK. And these are the 16 things. I'm not going to read them all to you. I'm going to give you about 45 seconds just so you can have a look and see the 16 things that come with THiNK. All right, fantastic. These are the 16 things that I think really help us teach English, but also engage and motivate teenagers while they're learning the language. Oh no, this is a disaster. Oh, something just happened with my Zoom. Oh, I've lost the 16. Maybe you could help me in the chat box. I'm wondering who can remember what some of those 16 things were. If you can remember what they were, can you go ahead and type them in the chat box for me? Type as many as you can remember in the chat box. He's got the 4 right away: reading skills, speaking skill, writing, listening. We got the 4 skills of English. CLIL, absolutely, that was on there. CFR, CLIL, the 4 skills, yes. Writing skills, yeah. I've got about 6 of them. Pronunciation, yes, that was on there. Vocabulary, pronunciation, reading, speaking, listening skills, yeah. Visual aids, yeah. Grammar, discourse. Higher order thinking skills, what a great one. Grammar was on there. How could we forget grammar? Everybody loves grammar. There's one. Social values, that was sent direct to me, but yeah, that was on there. CEFR, sure. Cultural awareness, that's right. Communication competence, I'll take that one, yeah. Okay, so you all really were paying attention. That makes me happy. Now, some of these, you may be familiar with what it means. Some of these, yeah, that was the one that we kind of missed there, personalization. Some of these you may not be so familiar with. So I want to know from you. I'm not going to spend time going through what all of these mean, because if you already know, I don't want to take the time away from it. But if there's one that you'd like to know what it means, for example, if you wanted to know what writing skills means, I don't think you will. I'm just doing this for an example. But if you wanted to know what writing skills means, could you type it in the chat box and do a little question mark? And then I'll give a brief explanation about what we mean by these things. So if there's one that you're like, huh, what's that? I don't know what that is. I wish you'd explain it to me. Now's your chance. So let me know in the chat box if there's one of these 16 things that you would like further explanation about. If you'd like for me to give an example or explain what it is. All right, I'm getting. All right, I'm making notes here. I'm getting a lot of the same ones again and again. Okay, fantastic. Fantastic. All right, thank you so much. I'm gonna turn off the chat box now. I saw in there basically 7 things that came up from the chat box. The first one that was the most popular that people said, hey, maybe talk about this a little bit, was CLIL. And CLIL stands for Content and Language Integrated Learning. Again, that's Content and Language Integrated Learning. And it's basically the idea that English is more than just communication. 20 years ago, when I started teaching English, if you asked anybody, why do you want to learn English? You would get the same answer. Nowadays, English has become the global language, and I need English to communicate with people from another country. And that is true. Communication is part of English. But nowadays, we study a lot in English. A lot of our academic books are in English. Websites are in English. And there is a different kind of English that we use with communication than when we're reading a news story or when we're studying in English. For example, if I say, do you like eggs? Yes, I love to have eggs for breakfast. That's communication. And that's what we consider communicative competence. Can I ask and answer a question? But if I said something like, tell me about eggs. Well, eggs come from a variety of birds. The most popular type is chickens that people eat. However, people in other parts of the world also eat eggs from other types of birds, such as ducks and turkeys, and even in some cases, ostriches. Now, that doesn't sound like a conversation. That sounds like a different kind of English. That sounds a little bit more academic. It sounds a little bit more explanation type. It sounds a little bit like science. That is an example of CLIL language. It's not the language for communication like go down the street and turn left. It's using English to talk about science, history, art, music. And so what we have to remember when we're teaching teenagers is that yes, they need English for communication, but they need English for study. And so that's what CLIL is. It just reminds us that there's a different style of English, and we have to teach both styles, the interpersonal communication skills and the more academic style language. CLIL is the language of school subjects. All right, the second one that was very popular was higher order thinking skills. Higher order thinking skills is kind of this idea of making our thinking more complex. If I just ask students to repeat after me, you know, what is today? Today is Wednesday. What is today? Today is Wednesday. They can answer that without thinking, right? What we want to do is we want to develop, hopefully in our students, some higher order thinking skills, what's sometimes called critical thinking and creative thinking skills. And it's really trying to move us from just remembering and understanding to be able to apply and analyze and be creative with the language. I don't have a lot of time to talk about it today, but if you're interested in how do we do higher order thinking skills, probably the most famous way to bring it into the classroom is something called Bloom's taxonomy. And I'm going to write that in the chat box, Bloom's taxonomy. And you can Google it. I know that there's things in Vietnamese about it as well. And it really talks about the difference between lower order thinking skills, just remembering and minor understanding, and higher order thinking skills. Now, what we want to do, the book is called THiNK. And that's important to us because we have figured out that when we engage teenagers with higher order thinking skills, when they have a chance to be creative, when they have a chance to analyze, when they have a chance to evaluate things on their own, they become more motivated. So it's not about finding the right activity or the right topic. It's about engaging the mind in the right type of thinking. And I'm going to be showing you some examples of that when we look through the course book of THiNK. So don't worry, that's coming up. So the next one that was very popular was discourse. I saw a lot of people type in discourse. Well, let me ask you this. She is a nice person. I'm going to write that in the chat box, that whole sentence. I'm going to write it in the chat box just so you can see it. She is a nice person. If you're watching the video and you can't see the chat box, it's just exactly what you think. She is a nice person. Now, is that sentence correct or incorrect? And I know you don't know who she is, but is that a good sentence or is that a bad sentence? Go ahead and let me know in the chat box. Discourse does not mean make a presentation. I'm giving you an example of discourse in a second. So just hold on. But she is a nice person. Is that correct or not correct when I'm looking at grammar? Let me know in the chat box. Don't be shy. If you're wrong, you're wrong. What do you think? Good sentence. It's correct. There's nothing wrong with that sentence. There's nothing wrong with the grammar. Totally nothing wrong with the grammar. How about this? I'm going to write another sentence in the chat box. I love my father. Correct or incorrect? Okay, I'm seeing correct. Anybody else want to? Okay, correct, correct, correct. All right. Yeah, everybody's saying correct, you're right. Now watch this. I'm going to put something else in the chat box. And I'll, for the people watching later on the video, I'll let you know what I typed in a second. I typed, I love my father. She is a good person. I love my father. And now people in the chat box are saying incorrect, wrong, 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 mistake. Yeah. The mistake is not with grammar, though. We've already said both of those sentences are correct. So what's wrong with the sentence? Can somebody just let me know briefly in the chat box what's wrong? She, right? Because my father means it's a man. It's an unclear meaning. What I have here is the pronoun, the way that the pronoun links back. This is not a grammar mistake. This is a discourse mistake. The way I like to think of it is grammar is what happens inside a sentence. But discourse is what happens when we bring sentences together. It's about longer forms of text. And so, you know, a lot of times we call something a grammar mistake, but that's actually not a grammar mistake. The problem is because father is masculine, it means a male, and she is feminine, it means a female. The reference link doesn't match up. It's the same thing like if I said, you know, I am rich, but well, no, I don't want to use that one. I am very tired. Furthermore, I do not want to go to sleep. That might make sense, but it might not make sense. Why am I using furthermore? You know, that's a little too formal. I'm tired, but I don't want to go to sleep. That's better because of the level of language. I'm mixing formal and informal. That's not a grammar mistake. That's a discourse mistake. So grammar is what goes on, you know, subject, verb, object, pronouns, adverbs in the right order, adjectives, that sort of thing. Discourse is about how I make sentences fit together. So that's the difference. And we'll look at some discourse, I think, coming up in one of the examples from THiNK. The next one that I'm going to briefly talk about is CEFR. That stands for the Common European Framework of Reference. And this is a global scale that helps us determine levels of English. Now, it's not important that you know everything about the CEFR. What I think is important with THiNK is THiNK was written with the CEFR in mind. And the CEFR does not talk about language with how many words do you know, or can you use the present perfect. The CEFR talks about language with what you can do with it. The CEFR is famous for its can-do statements. So instead of saying like, do you know English? Yes, I know the present perfect. That's not really meaningful to a lot of our students. Really, it's, do I know English? Well, yes, I can talk about things, my past experiences. That's more real. So the magic of the CEFR, again, that stands for the Common European Framework of Reference. It gets us to think about language, about what we can do with it. You know, one of the problems I think we have, at least we did 15 years ago in Southeast Asia, is we had students who could fill in worksheets and they get the grammar correct, but they couldn't use the language. THiNK wants to be a book where, yes, we learn grammar, but we learn grammar to make sure that we can use the language. I don't want to learn about English. I want to learn how to use English. and the CEFR reminds us to do that. The next one that I saw was social values. Social values is just the idea that who I am makes a difference to society. Social values involve things like being responsible for recycling or, taking care of the planet. They are values. They're things that are important to us, but they're different than like religious values or family values. Social values has to do with being a good citizen and citizenship. And THiNK has incorporated social values into the course. Again, I'll show you some of those in the example, so I won't spend too much time with it. Listening skills is exactly what you're doing right now, but listening skills has to do with making sure that we're getting better and improving our listening ability. One of the 4 skills of English. And the last one is personalization that people ask me to talk about. Personalization means making sure the language is real to the students, that we give them opportunities and we're asking questions where they get to say what they want to say. So if I ask you, what is the day before Wednesday? That's not really a personalized question. Go ahead and let me know in the chat box. What is the day before Wednesday? Somebody type it for me. What is the day? Yeah, and I get it right there. Tuesday. Same answer, and there's right or wrong, and it's more like I'm testing your days of the week. But what is your favorite day of the week? Let me know in the chat box. What is your favorite day of the week? And now I get Tuesday, Sunday, Thursday, Sunday. Sunday is very popular here. Nobody likes Saturday? Saturday is my favorite day. There's one. I got one for Saturday. The point is that small thing makes a big difference because I get the chance to give an answer, but it's my answer. And so with teenagers, if you're wondering about how do I get them to speak in class, asking questions that are more open, that have more than one correct answer, tends to get them to speak more than if they feel they're being tested and they have to say the right or wrong thing. So personalization is a way that we can get to improve motivation and to improve getting students to speak in class. So thank you very much. Those were the 16 things, like I said, that THiNK wants to do. And now I want to show you for the rest of the session how we put it together and how THiNK works. To do this, I'm going to show a full unit of THiNK. It doesn't matter which level you're teaching with THiNK. They pretty much work the same way. They follow the same pattern. So don't worry about that. But I want to take you through it and show you some of these key things. Now, the first thing I want to point out, if you look up here, is that we have at the top objectives. And this is where I said, yes, it does teach grammar. Yes, it does teach vocabulary. But that link to the CEFR, this is what we're going to talk about when we talk about functions. These are the things that students are going to be able to do with English. I'm going to be able to talk about past habits. I'm going to be able to talk about imaginary situations. Because students and teenagers don't really tend to get excited about grammar. They get excited about being able to use English and to see what they're going to learn. So the first thing that I'd show you is the objectives and say that they're there in every single unit. And we're going to talk about science. And we have these visuals. And the visuals are used for a lead-in. I'm going to leave these visuals up for a second. In general, and by the way, I guess I should tell you what we have here. Number 1, I've got fire. Number 2, I have the wheel. Number 3, I have electricity. Number 4, I have a smartphone. Number 5, I have paper. And number 6, I have a car, an automobile, a car. Now, I've told you what each of these are, but what I'd like from somebody in the chat box, can you let me know, what do all of these things have in common? What do all of these things have in common? They are all blank. So all of these things are, they're not all, they are visual input, that's good. But in general, if you were asking that to a student, what would you expect your student to say? These are definitely visual input, you got me there. All of these things are, well, power, maybe. Well, paper, is paper really power? I wouldn't say power. I wouldn't say visual input. If you asked your students, what do all, now somebody in the privately to me said they exist, inventions, you're closer, but did we invent fire? Did we invent electricity? They're all old things. Now, the smartphone seems pretty new to me still. Maybe I'm old. Now, I've got discoveries. Yeah, we discovered fire. We discovered electricity. But did we discover the smartphone? And this is kind of what I would do with students, because, you know, students, again, they would want the easy way out. You know, they would, now I have an interesting one here, communication. I never thought about that, but I could see how a lot of these have enabled communication. That's a fantastic answer. We communicate, you know, face to face. We need the car to travel. The wheel helped us travel to communicate. Electricity. We used to, you know, send smoke to communicate. What an interesting answer. The evolution, that they get more and more, you know, that they evolve through science here. And this is the point. Don't have exactly a correct answer that I'm looking for. Then what does THiNK ask me to do? You'll see here that we looked at pictures and we said what it showed, but then we work in pairs. And I can't have you work in pairs, obviously, and especially if you're watching this on the video afterwards. But look at what we do. We ask them to do a little bit of speaking. But I thought this was the reading section. It is, but the speaking is not to check their grammar or to say right or wrong. The speaking is to getting them excited about the topic of the unit and to get them prepared for the reading, to activate their mind. And then we could say, why are these things in exercise 1 important? What was life like for people before they had these things? And when you're teaching with THiNK, when you see this red speaking that's right there, this is meant to be short, 1 to 2 minutes. That's it. You see, we know with teaching teenagers that if we ask them to talk for 10 minutes, they're going to be like, finish, teacher, boring. They'll just sit there and we'll be like, why don't you speak? And they won't want to talk. So with THiNK, instead of having them talk 1 time for 10 minutes, we like to have them talking 10 times for 1 minute. It's the same amount of speaking, but it feels doable. And we get more out of our students by doing it that way. So they work in pairs for that activity. And then they work in pairs or even small groups again. We change it. And here are those words you said. Electricity and fire are discoveries. The other things are inventions. What's the difference? And then, just like I gave that example of what's your favorite day of the week, which of the 6 things above do you think is the most important and why? And I'm just going to show you those 6 things again. I want to know in your mind, I'm just curious. I want to know, you as teachers, which of these 6 things do you think is the most important? Let me know in the chat box, but let me know why as well. Which of these 6 things, of the fire, the wheel, electricity? Annie says smartphone. Wynn says electricity. For me, I kind of agree with Wynn there. Or is it Twee? Sorry, I agree with Twee there. You know, electricity. Fire is the spark of civilization. Ooh, I like that one. I like that. That's fun. Oh. But I wonder nowadays, could I live without fire or could I live without electricity? Nowadays, to me, I would rather have electricity than fire. But I do respect fire. I could actually live, if I had a smartphone but no electricity, I don't think I would like life, because my battery is going to go dead and my smartphone's only going to last a day. And then what can I do with my smartphone without electricity? That's just my mind. But these are conversations that we can have with our students. And as I'm doing this speaking for the unit introduction, if my students make a small, tiny grammar mistake, but the message gets through, let the grammar mistake go. This is the chance to have a safe speaking environment where they can be free to express their opinions. If you ask me, how do I motivate my students? This is how you motivate. You ask them a question and you care about their answer more than you care about them getting the grammar perfect. That's the secret to motivation right there. I see one person said 2 of 6, electricity and mobile, but which one? Which one is more important? If my students tried that, I would ask them, you have to choose one, which one? And I'd really try to push them. So I'm interested there for whoever just said 2 of 6, electricity and mobile, which one's number 1? Which one's number 1? So that's a way, and for all of the unit openers, you're going to see some sort of speaking that relates to some visuals. And that visual input is there to get us thinking, you know, so that we can put the words on top of the visual. It's not to teach vocabulary. At this level, they already know the words fire. They already know the words wheel. What it's there for is, like I said, to activate the schema. Electricity, I see it there, electricity is there. And then I see also fire is what we can see, electricity we can't see, but it decides what we can see. Totally agree with you. That's very insightful. I like that. You can see how we can have fun with this in class. We can use the materials to care about what we're saying. So many times when I think our students are unmotivated, it's because we ask them to talk about very silly things. What did you do yesterday? I went to the movies. And you, what did you do yesterday? I went to the movies with you. Finish, teacher. And they're just doing the grammar. They're not really expressing themselves. THiNK gives them a chance to express themselves. Then we start preparing them for the reading. With THiNK, there will always be a reading after we warm up. And the text on the next page, we're reading for meaning first. We want to understand the text. And it will conclude with an activity to activate the learner's motivation. In this case, a personalization activity. So this is the text, and we read the text. The text is about why aren't people more interested in science, and it talks about it. It's an interesting topic. You know, instead of saying science is important, it talks about why do some people not like science? And if I look back on the page before, we read and we discuss, and we read and we listen and read at the same time, because for those of you who want to develop students' listening skills, when we listen and read at the same time, it has an effect of improving our listening skills as well as our reading skills. So you can see on number 5 here, it says read and listen. It integrates the skills together, which brings in better comprehension. So I love it. And then down at the bottom, you can see an example of social values, how science helps people. The sentence, then we do some speaking, and then here are 4 things science has given us. Write down 3 more. How do these things help us? These ideas of being appreciating what we have. This is what we see. Now, here we find a values section. It could have been a train to think section, which is about critical thinking and higher order thinking skills, or it could have been a self-esteem section, which is personalization. That changes in every unit, but the activity and the way we should always end the lesson is something free like this. We shouldn't rush to the grammar too quickly, because this is where personalization, this is where motivation, this is where confidence is born. And notice we've done all of that and we haven't even talked about the grammar yet. What all of these have in common is there is not one correct answer. Teenagers are more likely to express themselves when they can't be wrong and when what they say matters. We're asking real questions, not questions to prove you've learned the grammar. So that's how page 1 and 2 work for any unit. And then after we've looked at the text, after we understand it, then we'll deal with the grammar. And the grammar has been presented to the students because they've been introduced it in the text already. THiNK focuses on meaning before form. It does teach the form of grammar, but only after the meaning of the grammar is understood. So for example, if we're learning the present perfect, we'll learn that the present perfect means something happened before now, but we don't know exactly when. We'll learn what it means, and then we'll learn the present perfect is made by using a verb to be plus the present participle, that sort of thing. Or, I have been, I have done. So that's basically it. Notice with the grammar, they find the passages in the reading first on part 1, and then they work out the rules for themselves. Instead of the teacher explaining the grammar to them, with THiNK, they get a chance to figure out the rules themselves. This is called an inductive approach to teaching grammar. Now, if the inductive approach, if they didn't quite get the rules, then we can be more deductive and explain it. But before we spend the time explaining the grammar, we give them a chance to figure it out themselves, instead of just being taught by the teacher. It can be sometimes scary. I know we as teachers, we think, I'm a teacher, I have to teach. I don't think so. We're a teacher. We have to create the conditions for learning. Sometimes that's by teaching, and sometimes that's by letting the students figure it out for themselves. And then we can see on the page, after the grammar, there will be more language development. In this case, vocabulary. Then we're going to go to the next page of the unit. And here we're going to find a skill, usually listening. And this is where we talk about teaching listening. And we teach listening in a very, in a very developmental way with THiNK. We don't just want to push play, see if the students got the answers right, and then say, good, 3 out of 5, because that's not really teaching listening, that's testing listening. But here, if I look at this listening lesson, what do I do? First, look at the pictures, again, those visual things. What do you see? I'm getting them thinking about what words they're going to hear. I'm getting them tuned in. I'm getting them thinking and predicting and getting them ready. It's what we call in linguistics priming them. That's the technical term for the listening. Not just pushing play and say, answer the questions, but we're getting them ready. And then they listen to a class discussion. You will hear 4 stories, number them in order. That's big listening. We're not listening for each detail. We're just trying to get enough of what we call listening for gist, G-I-S-T, so that we can look at listening from a discourse level. Which one came first? Which one came second? Which one came third? Which one came fourth? And then after we get that, we listen again and we listen for detail. Answer the questions here. That's a systematic way of teaching listening. Activate and prime, listen for gist, and then listen for detail. It's a process, not just a testing of it. You'll also see on the page that it links to pronunciation. There's pronunciation in the back of the book. Why is it in the back of the book? Because there are certain things that your students already know and don't have a problem with. You know, if there's p and b, Vietnamese learners don't tend to have a problem with p and b. But if you taught in the Middle East, that would be a big problem. But sounds like the U sound in some words, or the S at the end of words, or the difference between R and L, or certain diphthongs, you know, joined vowels in English. These can give learners problems. So the pronunciation is there if you need it, but you know, if you already have the sounds in Vietnamese, you don't have to waste your time teaching something they already know. And then you'll also see on this page functions. And functions is kind of like that discourse that we talked about, or it's, you know, making sure that the can do can happen. So here it's about talking about past habits. Think about when you were younger, write down 5 things you used to believe, and now talk about it. It's about getting beyond just the sentence. It's about being longer with what we say and being able to use the language, not just learn about the language. Then in page 5, you're going to see another reading. And this reading passage, it's a little bit different than the first reading. The first reading sets up the idea of the unit that we're going to talk about science. It gives us some things to talk about, and it serves mainly to get us interested and to set up the grammar. This reading, though, it will still set up some grammar, but it will also concentrate on specific reading skills, things like skimming and scanning and finding the main idea and that sort of thing. Some more traditional reading skills that aren't always looked at in the first reading, because the first reading on page 1 is going to have a lot more to get students motivated, to get them excited about learning, to listen to what they have to say. So you can see there's less speaking in this one just right at the beginning. And then we see a web forum, and then it asks them to read and listen and read again and go on to it. But you'll see that it also ends this time not with a think values, but a train to think. And again, this is personalization, but now this is about higher order thinking skills, using criteria. Rank these in order from the most useful to the least useful. You still get to have your own ideas. You know, if somebody says this is the most useful and somebody else says this is the least useful, there's not a correct answer. It's about the reason why you think that way. And what I'm doing here is I'm justifying my response and I'm ranking these. And those are all parts of higher order thinking skills. I'm not just remembering something and saying it back. I'm using my brain to make decisions. That's what we're talking about when we say train to think. So there'll be things in throughout think, using criteria, analyzing arguments, making sure you can believe someone or not. These are all important things. So you can see here on page 5, like I said, the second reading, but it's for a different purpose. It's for more reading skills. The first reading set the context and serve for stimulus. The second reading focuses more on traditional comprehension strategies of both top down, you know, getting the ideas, and bottom up, reading for detail strategies. You can think of like top down as maybe like skimming and bottom up is like scanning. And then the train to think to help them learn their critical thinking and higher order thinking skills. And then finally, page 6. And it's going to have language development similar to before related to the reading. But what I want you to notice is how it ends. And it ends again with a speaking activity. But the speaking activity refers back to the reading. And it involves us working in groups. And even in the end, in class, compare everyone's ideas, vote for the best ones. Because this very final activity doesn't just do speaking for speaking's sake. It's not just reviewing the vocabulary. It's talking about the whole ideas of the unit. And this is where we as a teacher can, yes, check a little bit for accuracy, but also to say, wow, look at how much you learned in the unit. I heard you saying the second conditional. I heard you saying all the things that we learned. This is great. The speaking activity integrates the other skills. And you're going to find that, throughout THiNK. We don't just teach a skill or grammar. All of these things are tied in together. That's key to teaching with THiNK. Please don't say, okay, we have finished reading, now let's do grammar. What we need to be saying is, okay, we have done the reading, now let's see the grammar that was used in the reading. It's a small thing, it makes a big difference. We're never finished with the grammar, we're never finished with the skill. They all blend together. They blend together in real life, so they need to blend together when we teach it. So in general, that's how that's how a unit works in THiNK. Something else I want to point out, at the end of the units, you'll find different sections. Sometimes you'll find photo stories, which are related to a video. And these are really motivating for teens because we can see the language in action, but we can also get what we call phrases for fluency. We can learn English as it's really spoken, things like, check this out, we're talking about, he was like, that sort of stuff. We can get some real world language that may not be academic, but appropriate for communicative competence. And there's also a word-wise section. I want to point that out to you in the upper right corner. The word-wise session is not really about increased vocabulary. It's about the small words that give learners problems. So here we can see made or making. Made is a difficult word because, we make fun of someone, or we make friends, or we make up, or we make sure. Make is a complicated word. So we have these little lessons for these smaller words. And I think that students really appreciate these because it can point out, some of the mistakes they sometimes make. In other units, though, you're going to find a culture section. And I really love what we've done for you guys in Vietnam, because not only have we looked at culture being global, but to Cambridge, culture does not just mean studying about some other country. It means being proud of who we are. So you can see here, for an example, we have great scientists. And we have Galileo, who's Italian. And we have Jane Goodall. But we also have Le Hutrac, who's Vietnamese. And talk about, the works in Vietnam, so that we can understand that culture is not just the food of another country or our food. Culture is what's normal for us, what's normal for somebody else, and how we share. To Cambridge, teaching culture means learning about others, but also being proud of who you are. And I hope that that really excites you, that we have, I was looking through, I saw some great things that we've added for the cultural section just for here. I'm really proud of it. And then one more thing that you'll see for an extension that's in the back of the book are some extra CLIL lessons. And this is the example of the CLIL lesson for the Unit 5 with technology. And again, very much related to Vietnam. You can see that it says, you know, work with a partner. We're going to be talking about global pollution. That's not communication. This is technology. This is science. This is environmental health. You know, this is CLIL. It's not go down the street and turn left or hi, how are you? It's some serious language. But when we get to the speaking at the end, you know, after we talk about vertical farming and solutions to these problems, how could vertical farming help these three problems mentioned? Some critical thinking, but then look at how it ends. Work in groups. Vietnam is an agricultural based nation. We have something to talk about and we have a project, and the project is very much real world to our students. We're not teaching about, you know, British things. It ties into something that is real. And this is important because students can see how they can use English in their own lives. It's not a subject to be studied. It's something to be used and something that applies to them. Two more things, and then three more things, sorry, and then we're done. I'm going to go for just about 5 more minutes. I'm running just a little bit over time, but I think it's good. We saw a train to think, and we saw a think values. Think self-esteem is also in this. And when you see think self-esteem, this is about personalization. This is about identity. And I kind of just want to show you how this works. Let me know in the chat box, which of these three would you rather be? An actor, a musician, or a dancer? You can't be all three. You can't be two. You have to choose one. Which one would you like to be? Which do you think would be more fun? And you can't say, I want to be an actor, because if I were an actor, I could act like a dancer and then I get to be, no, you have to choose one. And it means you don't get the other two. Let me know in the chat box, an actor, a musician, or a dancer. Wonderful. I see first one. I see that we have a dancer. Why a dancer? I've got 2 for dancers, yeah. Come on, guys, I have 171 people. I know that I can get at least 3 more answers. Come on. Which would you rather be? An actor, a musician, or a singer? That's the one that I would choose. The problem, yeah, musician there, yeah. I'm not doing gardener yet. I'm not gardener yet, sorry. It's a teacher, I love children. Anyway, the point is I'd take it one by one. You all are moving ahead. And then you choose between waiter, cleaner, gardener. Then you choose between teacher, firefighter, police officer. And again, there's not a correct answer. There's not a correct answer. It's your opinion. But look at how this changes with number 4. Again, you only get to choose one. You don't get to choose 2. You don't get to choose 3. You only get to choose one. Only one. Which of these 3 would you rather be? Would you rather be rich, famous, or clever? You do not get to be 2 of them. You do not get to be all 3. If you're rich, that means you're not famous and you're not clever. If you're clever, that means you're not rich, you're not famous. Oh, I'm seeing rich, rich, rich. You'd rather be rich and dumb than clever, and you know, it doesn't mean that you'd be poor, it just means not rich. So some people say clever, some people say famous, and you can see how this changes. And it really, you know, 1, 2, and 3 in this activity, where actor, waiter, teacher, this is to get us used to the activity, used to the language, like I'd rather be, and to make it safe. But now I'm talking about me personally. And so this is the way that we get students, especially teenagers, to talk about themselves and think about their identity. Remember what we said at the beginning, we get a chance to see the person they're going to become. And if one of my students say rich, I don't say you're wrong. I say rich, why? The only thing I would say wrong is if they say, I want to be rich because if I'm rich, I'll be famous. And I'll say there are many rich people who are not famous, and there are many famous people who are not rich. You don't get to be both. And the reason why I would bring that up is because for the last one, then I would make them choose. And I want to know from you guys, which is most important to you? You only get to be one. If somebody described you, would you want them to describe you as successful? Would you want them to describe you as helpful? Or would you want them to describe you as kind? Which one is the most important for you? And I see in the chat box there, kind, and that's a great answer. Somebody else. You see what we mean by this self-esteem. It doesn't mean, hey, you're a great person. It means really taking an inner look at ourselves and deciding what kind of person we want to be. So those are some things that make THiNK very, very special. 2 more slides and then I'm done. I want to remind you, if you're teaching with THiNK, don't forget about the teacher's book. The teacher's book is more than just the answers. The teacher's book, I took all of these from the teacher's book. They're ideas for mixed ability classrooms. There are ideas for fast finishers. So if you have a large class of like 40 people, what do I do if some of them are still working, but some of them are finished? There are ideas in the teacher's book to help you. There's extension activities. If the students are really like the activity, you want to go on. There's background information for you as the teacher. There are language notes for you as the teacher in case sometimes you find the grammar tricky, that you can share with the students or just to remind you before you teach it. The teacher's book is much more than just an answer key. It's much more than just a lesson plan. There's great ideas. If somebody's going to ask me, my class is big, what do I do? Or my class has different levels, what do I do? My answer is going to be, look at the ideas in the teacher's book. They're wonderful. They're wonderful. And there's also a workbook or an activity book that comes with it. I just do want to point out that there are things in it like exam boosters. There's things like Get It Right, which is also about, common mistakes that students make. There's extra writing in the workbook. So if you care a lot about writing, you'll find it in the workbook. And then there are, just things that go along with extra grammar and other, the normal stuff that we'd expect to find in a workbook. What I do want to point out, which you may notice in the workbook, is some of these have stars. Here's one with 2 stars, 2 stars. Sometimes they go up to 3 stars. Sometimes they go to 1 star. And what that is the level of difficulty of the activity. So maybe you want to assign all of it. Maybe you want to say to your students, hey, do the workbook. I need you to do a total of 4 stars. So they could do 4 easy activities, or they could do 1 difficult activity and 1 easy activity, or they could do 2 2-star activities and give them some choice in what they want to do. Or you could just assign the workbook and use it however you want. You're the teacher, you have the final decision. But I just wanted to point out that the stars mean the level of difficulty. You can see the one up here. This is a 3-star one. It's going to be the most difficult. It's going to be much more difficult than the 1-star one. So you can keep that in mind if you're differentiating or if you have advanced learners or people who need more support. And those are things to think about it as well. So that is basically what I wanted to share with you about THiNK, about how it works and how to teach it. The main points are meaning comes before focus, and the integration. We don't have just a grammar lesson or a reading lesson, or a lot of times we read and listen together. Why do we do that? Because it integrates the skills around the theme. And we find that this gives, more of a chance for language to be learned. And then with our train to think or THiNK values or THiNK self-esteem, it gives us a chance to get students talking in ways that teenagers are engaged and motivated. Just like you saw, because there's not a correct answer, there are many answers, and we get a chance to see who the students are going to become, and we get a chance to really care about what they say. I'll leave you with this. The #1 thing that teenagers need is a teacher that they think cares about them, not a teacher that knows all the grammar. And so THiNK is designed to let you have these interactions with your students so that you can be successful and helpful and kind. So that's my session. Thank you very, very much. I'm going to stop sharing there and turn it over to you to see if you have any questions and to Win. So Win, over to you.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you for the wonderful session. I hope the teacher feel the same as me. Do you have any questions for us, for Alan and for myself? I have some questions from the teachers who can make comment on the chat box and the registration form.
Okay.
So I will go one by one, and in the meantime, if you have if you have any comment or any questions, please have to put on the chat box, and I will come back to you, the answer to you later. I have the questions, Alan, from the teachers. How to involve with students who don't have enough background knowledge, eager to learn English?
So I think, that's really what THiNK is designed to do. And the trick there is not to just try to make them read or give them more background knowledge. It's about taking those small little speaking activities and give them a chance to learn from each other. And what you're going to find, especially in the first pages of THiNK, when they do this thing, before they do the first reading and they're activating, and we were talking like, our activities that were about discoveries versus inventions, you might have one student lean over to the other student and say, what's this? And they might speak a little bit of Vietnamese and help each other. And that's okay. We don't need an English only classroom. We need an English as much as possible classroom. And so the more that I get them, and you'll notice this a lot in THiNK, it says work in pairs, a lot in work in group works. That's the way that students do the hard part for us. A lot of the problems we have when we teach teenagers, and we have those problems, is we try to do it all ourselves. We don't trust our students to help each other. They can teach each other sometimes better than we can teach them. And so letting them and providing the opportunity to do that. So what I would say is I meant what I said. Our job as a teacher is not always to teach, it's to create the conditions to learning. So that involvement, that interaction, that developing the ideas comes from letting them work together, activating what they know, using those visuals. And then after that, you'll notice that we always have a reading first. That reading can provide some of that extra background that comes later for the listening. So making sure that we understand the reading before we move on to the grammar and everything, because if students are saying they don't have enough ideas or enough language, usually that's because we're teaching grammar too quickly and we've forgotten that the skill of reading or listening isn't to present grammar, it's to give us ideas. So that would be my answer. If you find that, spend more time on the first 2 pages of THiNK. That's what they're designed to do. And I think you're on mute, Win? Yeah.
Thank you for your answer, and I hope the teachers who comment this can be satisfied. I agree with you.
Oh, thank you.
And I have the second question: how to get students to be confident in communicate in English?
Confidence comes when they think that what they're saying gets listened to. It goes back to what I was saying. If I ask a question and I don't really care about the answer, I only care about your grammar, the student's not going to be confident. They're going to be scared to make a mistake. But if I put the meaning first, you're probably noticing a pattern with all my answers here. And I spend so much time talking about it because it is what I see as one of the problems, not just in Vietnam, but throughout Southeast Asia. We look at language as grammar and vocabulary, not as the meaning that's expressed, right? And so how do you get them to be confident? We ask them a question, we listen to their answer, And we respond based on saying something like, that's really interesting, not your grammar was perfect. And once somebody says interesting and they go, you understood me? I think my grammar was no good. You just say, I understood you. It wasn't perfect. I understood. And I thought it was a great idea. People hearing that what they say gets valued. That's what most teenagers need. They don't need to hear, okay, we have maybe 3% of our students that want to have the perfect grammar and the 100%. I'm not going to say 0 do. They want the A+, they want, they have the parental pressure, they want the 100 on the grammar activity. We have some, but most teenagers want, and all of them need, to be seen, to be heard, and to be listened to. And so making sure that we're giving feedback first on what they said, and then maybe how they said it, instead of jumping on, you didn't use the past tense, or remember your S. That's the way we do it. We respect them, and respecting our students will lead to confidence and motivation.
Thank you, Alan. I'm sure that you have mentioned this on this point that the teacher asked on your presentation before, and would you mind to mention this again? The question is that, would you like to give me some way to improve listening skill? And the second question, I think that you already mentioned. So the second question is about how can we, an English teacher, help students to develop their critical thinking?
Okay, I'll take those one at a time, because the listening skill, like I said, the biggest issue we have when we teach listening is we're not really teaching it, we test it. We push play, they fill in the blanks, we say, did you get it right or wrong? Then we check the answers and then we move on. That's not teaching, that's testing. Two things with listening, just to reiterate, you'll notice that a lot of THiNK lets them read and listen at the same time. That's wonderful. And even if it's just a listening session with THiNK, there's some tape scripts, there are some audio scripts that they can see that you can photocopy and let them read along, as they're listening. That is very, very helpful, because students can match what they're reading with what they're hearing. It improves reading speed and it improves listening comprehension. And then the second thing, like I said, is remember that process, that it starts out big and wide. And, we start out saying you don't need to understand every word. You just need to understand which order these pictures go. And then when they get that right, they understand they have the gist. Then we repeat it with a more detailed task. The trick to teaching listening skills, is to find reasons to repeat the audio script 3 or 4 times, letting them have a different task each time. So the reading example I gave with THiNK, you saw, if we really did that, we'll be listening to that 4 times. Once to introduce the pictures, once to put them in order, once in order to get the true false, and then the last time to check the answers. That's how we teach instead of just testing. So that's my ideas for listening skills. Critical thinking, it means, to develop the critical thinking, we have to build on what they already know and have them not just give an answer, but justify it. The most important word that students who are critical thinkers are going to use is the word because. And critical thinking, what I like to say is critical thinking, it comes out of because. So if I have a student that says, I think being rich is more important than being famous, I might not even say why. I would just look at them and say, because, and then because, and they have to justify their answers. And then I would not rate them on whether they said rich or famous. I would say, that sounds like a good reason, or I'm not convinced. Does anybody else have a better reason? And so that's what we mean about critical thinking. Critical thinking is not about brainstorming the idea. It's about dealing with the idea and evaluating. One of the activities we saw in THiNK on the page with that critical thinking one that was there was just ranking things. Which of these is more important? Let me ask you this in the chat box. There are different brands of mobile phones. All of you all said smartphone is good. Which is better, an Android phone or an Apple phone? Go ahead and let me know in the chat box, which is better, an Android phone or an Apple phone? Siga, thanks so much. You're welcome so much. Oh, I see Android. And now, you know what I'm going to say next? Android because... And again, you might have different reasons. It's less expensive. I have more freedom with it. Or, you know, maybe you say Apple because it's more privacy, or I don't like Google, or I love it. It's not your answer. It's why your answer was your answer. Critical thinking is not having the response. It's about understanding why you think what you think. That's how we develop critical thinking, and that's how THiNK does it. I hope that was a good enough example. When you can tell me if that was okay or not.
Yeah, with that, I think that with your example is good. Yeah, I think the teacher can apply that to the classroom to get the student think more. And also from the chat box, I see the message from Miss Châu Nguyễn. Do you think we should give students a mini project like presentation or debate in high school? And it is a way to increase their communicative competency.
The answer is yes, I do. But the trick is this. Okay, I absolutely love debates. I absolutely love projects. We have to make sure we have enough time to do them right. When debates go bad, or when projects go bad, it's when we try to rush them. When we say, okay, we're going to have a debate, it's this issue, should we do this or that? You have 2 minutes to think of your ideas and go. And then our students are like, you know, if we have a debate, if we have a project, we have to give them enough time. Even if it's a mini project, you're going to be doing that over 1 or 2 lessons. So my answer is yes, I absolutely love them if we have time, but it's better not to do them than to do them too rushed. If you don't have the time to do them, skip it. If you do have the time to do them, then yes, they're great and they're wonderful. And again, they bring in a sense of teamwork. They bring in a sense of collaboration. They bring in a sense of learning to work in a group, you know, beyond just collaboration, but with responsibilities. They are wonderful if you have the time to do them correctly.
Thank you. I'm running out of questions from the teachers, and we are about time. Do you have any questions, teachers? Please put one more question, one more chance for you. Okay.
Can I ask them a question then, since we have time? I want to turn it around on them.
Can you tell me how to teach CLIL from Mr. Thủy?
Oh, so there's another. Can you teach me how to teach CLIL? It's not that we need a different way of teaching. CLIL isn't about a different way. It's about what we're teaching. So you teach CLIL just like you teach anything else. The difference is, you know, maybe I want a CLIL math lesson. I'll give you an example that's more for primary kids. But, you know, if we only teach communication, you know, and not CLIL, we forget important words in English, like, imagine that I want to say something about math, 3 + 3 = 6. Well, plus and equals is not vocabulary that we use in everyday conversation. That would never be in a conversation class, but it is CLIL language. So really what we look at when we want to teach CLIL is we look at a topic, maybe it's math, maybe it's music and musical instruments, you know, and maybe I want to describe, you know, woodwinds versus percussion versus strings and how we categorize them. It changes the vocabulary. But the way we teach the vocabulary doesn't change. Maybe if you love flashcards, use flashcards. Maybe if you use the notebook for communication, you use the notebook for CLIL. So that's the number one thing I can think of. Don't think that you have to change how you teach with CLIL. You're changing what you teach.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
I have a question for them. I just, since we do have time and I'm interested, you know, I just would like to know, I'm seeing a lot of thanks so much, and I do appreciate the good feedback. I don't know if you're just being nice. Could you let me know one thing that you got out of this workshop? Just one thing, just for reflection, so I know what you learned, so I can focus on that when I do this. It would really help me if you could tell me something useful you got from this workshop. It's not a test. I just want to know. I just want, you know, like I said, want to know from you, just because I'm curious. What's something
please,
that you learned from this?
Please give us your feedback.
Yeah.
We appreciate for that.
Yeah, because good job. It's good to hear, but I don't know what I did good. So.
Yes, specific some area.
Yeah, I'd like to know.
Because, you know, in the future, we're going to give you some more training. So your feedback is very useful for us for our future training.
You gave it away, but that's really why I'm asking, since we had time too. Because I want to make sure we're giving you what you need. So I'm not seeing any answers in the chat box. Come on, 148 people.
Teacher,
one thing,
please.
one thing you learned or that you would like to learn more about because of this workshop. I'm getting some things directly to me.
If you don't say anything, it means that you don't like the way we are doing.
Oh, you didn't like it.
So please. So please.
Just so you know, when there are people who are direct messaging me, and they said, I've got two, and since they direct, I won't say their names, but CLIL is a big one. We have two things about CLIL. One person has said discourse. They want to know that. One person has said just directly to me, I'm great, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And then one person said, really useful about time, you know, how do I balance the time with it? One thing I would say that with Zenbooks and what your team has done with THiNK, I believe you have actually kind of mapped it with the years, so that if they use THiNK, you can see, you know, we suggest you do lesson 1 in this time and get up to this page in the book. So we've actually mapped out, you know, if you have this many lessons, you can do it on this day. Would you like to say a little bit more about that, about what you've mapped out? Because you're more of an expert with that than me.
You mean about the book?
Yeah, about the timing, about, you know, how many pages should I get through? Because I think I saw that you have made a document for
yes,
them.
we had already made the document, the lesson plan, and for the teacher. So all the documents are on the website, so the teacher can refer to that. And one last question: more classes at high school are crowded. How can we teach them speaking skill effectively?
Work and group work and trust them. You know, the problem is you know, whenever I see people ask this, then I go watch their classes. They try to do speaking in a big class of 50, one by one, with all the students. We have to trust them with pair work and group work, and that doesn't mean walking around with our checkboard listening to them for their mistakes. It means putting them in there, letting them get on with the activity, getting the task in there, and then getting the feedback and just sitting back and trusting them. But this again is the number one thing that I would say about THiNK. I love this book. It's not just my business card. I love this book because the other thing is, notice how in those speaking activities in THiNK, I said there's lots of small, short opportunities instead of big, long ones. If we have a class of 40 people and we want to try to get them to speak with each other for 10 minutes, that's impossible. I can't monitor that. But 40 people working in pairs or groups of 4, doing 2 minutes of speaking, and then I ask their answers, and then I give 2 more minutes of speaking and check on another group, and then 6 minutes of speaking. Again, it adds up to that same 10 minutes. but breaking up speaking into smaller parts, step by step, that's the way that it becomes more manageable. And the last thing I'd say, pay attention to who you're giving feedback to. You know, we don't want to just, you know, call on the same students every single time. And don't just rely on your memory. Make notes after class. Who were my talkers? Who weren't my talkers in the class? And make it an effort to call on the people who didn't talk, but especially call on them on those low risk things where the answer does not have a correct answer. You know, the things more like, what's your favorite day? Get them talking right away and give everybody a chance, not really just to speak, but to be seen. The more students feel like you see them, especially in a large class, the more they will talk to each other during pair work and group work. It's not perfect, but it's the best we can do. So that's my answer.
Thank you, Alan. And on behalf of Cambridge University Press, the Education and University Publisher, and Zenbooks, I would like to say thank you to teachers who already spent a lot of valuable time with us and stay with us until the end. And I do hope you will find the book called THiNK suitable to your school program in coming school years. And also get some tips how to teach THiNK effectively and inspire your students learning English. I do hope to see you in our future training. Thank you very much and have a nice evening with the family. Thank you.